The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, of course, Frank Saberic. And in the famous words of Steve Harvey of Family Feud, we got another good one for you, folks. And today is my guest. I had her on before the last time she ran for governor, and now she's running for, the Republican governor seat of New Hampshire. Karen Testerman. Karen, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Frank. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, and needless to say, I have a few questions for you. And but before we get into the nuts and bolts, why don't you tell my audience again a little bit about yourself and why you're running for New Hampshire governor in 2022?
Well, first of all, I'm the daughter, wife, mother, grandmother of military members in all four services. We have Army, Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard. Well, my nephew is Coast Guard, but my daughter was a potential for Merchant Marine. And I was a Marine mom when I was in, my husband was stationed in Australia. So we had we've got all four services covered. And my dad was in the 442nd, which was the most decorated during World War II. I founded Cornerstone Policy Research because I'm very interested in maintaining the family unit. The family unit is the building block of America. And I've worked with making sure that we were well versed on the Constitution. So I was a founding member of the New Hampshire Constitutional Studies Group. And I'm a former teacher. I'm a sitting counselor in Franklin, New Hampshire, sitting on the city council. And last year in June, somebody said, isn't there someone who will challenge the dynasty that sits in the corner office? And I figured I've done a lot of things in New Hampshire, and I could get involved if I needed to. So I did. And I was really very proud of the people of New Hampshire because in just three short months, because I had not been laying the groundwork like I am now, we raised a sufficient amount of money to pay for the campaign without having any residual debt.
Oh.
We garnered almost 10% of the vote, and I mean, it was a moving, growing group of people who were standing up and saying that they wanted some change.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, Sununu, I guess we were talking a little bit before the camera started rolling here. Would it be fair to say, from somebody like myself or some of the pundits that cover New Hampshire politics, to call the Sununus the Kennedy family of New Hampshire?
I think it's probably fair to say. I mean, you've got generation after generation, which is why they call it the Kennedy dynasty, right? It's the same thing with the Bushes. You had
Right.
multiple years of generations of people who have grown up in that and know the system and can play it pretty well.
And let me ask you something. Some of these questions are kind of probably off the wall that you'd probably get in a town hall meeting from people, off the cuff here
Sure.
and there. Women versus a man.
Yeah.
Do you think that men, and I guess there's a stigma involved in politics, although when it comes to Donald Trump, throw out those rules because he has no problem like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. He'll attack them the same way, like a businessman, a big time
He was
businessman.
very, very interesting in fact, because what Donald Trump would do, he would float a tag on one of his opponents. If it stuck, he would keep using it over and
Crooked
over
Hillary
again.
and Sleepy Joe.
Right. Or Lion Ted. Look at what he did to Ted Cruz. And that was really quite something when he did that. But the one person that he tried to do that to was Carly Fiorina, and she threw it right back at his face, and he didn't touch her again. I mean, that one just died completely.
Yeah.
But you know, when you have men versus women, a lot of times the men don't want to come off as being too aggressive. And there have been times in the past in New Hampshire politics where there was a male against a female candidate, and because they would not go for the jugular, so to speak, they lost the race to the female. In many cases, that's the Shaheen charm, if you want to call it that. That the male opponents, whether it was Ovid LaMontagne or some of these other people, wouldn't go after her record and really hold her to it. They would back off because they didn't want to appear to be too aggressive.
I see. Now, from what you've seen, now you've only run against Chris Sununu once before.
Yeah, I just ran against him.
Oh, just the last time around? Did you notice when he went in the general election against the Democrat, did he run against a female or a male?
It was against a male. So.
Do you think he was more aggressive in the general election than he was with you? Or could you tell?
Well, we never appeared on the debate.
You told me you never debated.
I think he was afraid to come out and debate me, quite honestly, but
okay. And well, the ads, did you run ads and did he run? Well, if he ran ads, he probably ran 0 against you.
Right. Chris Sununu runs like he is going to be the one. He is very, very confident that he will have the nomination, that he will have the election. And he runs that way, which is fine.
I see. And one more thing about Chris Sununu. The first time around, you probably, said, I wish I had done A, B, and C different, and maybe the results would have been different. What's different in the 2002 race? 2022. Sorry about that. To next year's race, that you hope to tweak from last year's race.
Remember, I didn't get in. I didn't even make a decision to jump in. I was a last minute person to jump in. This time around, I'm laying the groundwork ahead of time. I've got more than just a quick throw together campaign plan. I've got one that I've been working on for some time. I have been building a following over the last year of people to support me, and so there's a lot of difference there, and quite honestly, there's more time to make your bids for fundraising and so forth like that, to make the phone calls that need to be made, to make the appearances, to actually get out and meet people. My goal is to get out and hear from the people what it is that they need, and what is the state doing currently in their policies that are getting in the way of the small business person to be able to do to grow their businesses. I'd love to find out that. So it's going to be a matter of my going out and meeting with small business people. So if they're interested, they can contact me at KarenTesterman.com, and I'd be happy to come visit you at your business and find out what it is that is important to you as far as what is the state doing, and how could the state help you more? The other things is I'm open to parents. I think parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's future, and so I want to be able to facilitate them in being able to carry out their responsibilities. And so there are differences in that just because of the difference in the time frame more than anything else.
I see. I see. So up until what, like 2 weeks to a month ago, like I said, he was Chris Sununu was in a not a brouhaha, but in controversy on whether or not he was going to go for like U.S. senator
Right.
against Maggie
He was
Hassan.
weighing
Yeah, weighing his options,
right.
so to speak.
Right.
So at that point, you really didn't have any preference one way or another on what his decision was going to be.
No. And quite honestly, people would ask me over and over again, well, who are you going to run against? Who do you think is going to be the next candidate? And I would tell them, I don't care, because I'm running for the people of New Hampshire. I'm not running to against any one person or their agenda. What I want to see is that we as a people are empowered, because right now we see that everything seems to be top down. One size fits all. You will do X, Y, Z, and that is totally contradictory to what our founding fathers wanted, and why when the Pilgrims came over from Holland and so forth, they came not only for religious freedom, but they came for education freedom, and they wanted to be able to oversee their child's education, the well-being of their children. They didn't, if they were disciplining their children, they didn't want the neighbors to be turning them in, which is where we are right now. But this was something that they fought against. And one of the two main reasons that they came to another country, that they left their homeland so that they could come explore something. And it wasn't going to be an easy challenge to get them over here. It was definitely something that was a decision to take a harder road to try and get a better life.
I see. Okay, so moving right along, I guess since probably like as far as I've been following politics, people have always said that that's why this happens, that happens, whatever happens, dirty tricks, and they say that's why people don't run for politics.
Yeah.
And now there seems to be this thing called cancel culture. And let's say hypothetically speaking, let's say you make it against the Democrat. It's more prevalent when you're running against the Democrat and criticizing them for whatever reason. And they'll say like in the situation in Virginia, you're talking about like talking to parents about schools, is like the critical race theory taught in New Hampshire public schools?
I believe it is. I believe there are pockets of it, if not. The current governor was for critical race theory before he was against it. But the interesting thing is that it's not so much what you're running, that you're saying that they're wrong in everything, because you can't judge somebody's intent. But what you can judge is their policies, and the policies that say that the government, and this is the big thing in education right now, that the government knows better what is good for your child than you, the parent, knows what's best for your child. And there is no one size fits all. It is an individual situation. So you know better whether Johnny needs to have more structure in his life, or whether he is a free thinker and a self-motivator, right? Because you live with him every day. And so that's where parents should be allowed to take that step. And it shouldn't be up to some government to decide, well, we think that this curriculum is better for Johnny than this curriculum because we get more money for this curriculum. Or because money does make a decision in a lot of things that is done by the agencies, so to speak, by the bureaucracies. And money and power speaks in some of those cases. But in reality, it should be something that when we're talking about what is it that we need to do, we need to talk about what is it that we're going to accomplish. And one of them is getting out of the way of the everyday person to make their own decisions about how they're going to put food on their table, put a roof over their head, how their children are going to be educated, how they're going to take care of their own bodies.
I see. So, okay, no, so hypothetically speaking, now, yeah, I know some Sununu supporters might be angry, but I'm just doing this hypothetically. You're going to win the Republican nomination, and the Democrat. It's probably more prevalent with the Democrat. They're probably going to support 110% critical race theory,
Well,
as they probably did in Virginia.
Right. Or social emotional learning, or anything that is more value based. And meanwhile, in the state of New Hampshire, even though we as a state score up in the upper 5 or 10 statewide as far as our academics are concerned, in my community, 60% of our children graduate without being able to read, write, and compute at grade level. So this is something that is more concerning to me, is to make sure that if in our education that we're teaching our children to have the skills that they need, the reading, the writing, the arithmetic, their comprehension, their ability to know where various locations are in geography, to know the engineering or the science of the biology or physics or whatever it is. It's more important to me that they know those sorts of skills rather than knowing whether or not somebody looks right or feels right or says the right thing to me. Those are value oriented issues that mom and dad should be taking care of.
But okay, like one of the things that they're arguing is that mathematics. Well, you're talking to a guy who flunked like algebra, geometry, trigonometry. I was the absolute worst. But addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, I was all right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would never, ever make it in engineering school or architect school.
Right.
Because you need to understand and comprehend a more advanced sense of mathematics.
Right.
Which I never did. And these people, if I'm getting them straight, are saying that mathematics, especially like algebra, trigonometry, geometry, is racist due to the fact that math should have more than one correct answer.
So why are we going to limit the ability of our child to be able to figure these things out? I mean, you go back into the history of New Hampshire and our education, and it started out with reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? But they also wanted those children to learn Latin and Greek and Hebrew. How many of our children today even have the concept of learning any of those languages fluently and being able to converse in them, and yet in the beginning of this country and then the beginning of this state, they actually did that. I mean, they started with free education that came over from Boston, and it became a situation where if you had 50 households in your community, that you would the inhabitants, not the residents, the inhabitants would actually contribute X amount of dollars to the education of the children that were in that community. And if you had over 100, it became mandatory that you had a grammar school. So there were certain benchmarks, so to speak, that had to be met. And the primary purpose was to educate them in reading, writing, and arithmetic. And the primary textbooks were the Testaments and the Psaltery. In other words, they came out of the Bible. And if you were able to recognize those words and put them together and understand them, that was the primary thing that you were learning when you first in New Hampshire history.
I see. But aren't you okay? Let's say you're hypothetically now you're going up against the Democrat
Right.
in the general election,
Uh-huh.
and you get in a debate and say that you're all against critical race theory, and your Democrat opponent is 110% in favor of critical race theory, and then all of it, and it looks kind of close in the polls and stuff like that. So all of your Democrat opponent, go on Facebook and other social medias and say Karen Testerman is obviously a racist and a white supremacist.
You want to call me a racist? I don't think so. I mean, and so I survived race discrimination. I've grown up with it. I came out of California where people of my face was the face of the enemy during World War II. I mean, and I grew up with the fact that we were the only Japanese family in the community that I lived in. So, and there were times when a young man would say, "I can't date you because my parents would have a fit," or any of that. I mean, I've lived it. I've survived it.
Okay, a couple of recent things in the news. Lee Elder, I guess he's on like a Fox contributor, Fox TV News contributor, and he's got his own radio show and podcast, a black gentleman.
Right.
He ran for governor of California this last time around.
Right.
And the newspaper there called him the black face of white supremacy.
Exactly. What is that? So, you know, the thing that fascinates me is that at one time, America was referred to as the melting pot. And we are all immigrants. We've all come here from another country.
Unless you're American Indian.
Unless you were American Indian. I happen to be an American-born native. So from that perspective, how do you become one race or another? I thought we were all part of the human race, and that we really are here to get along and to achieve the very best that we can be. That's what freedom is all about in the founding of this country, was to come here so that you could now make your own decisions, that you could you have something to say about your own destiny. If you work hard, you respect other people, that you are ethical, that you're not trying to hurt other people in any way. You know, you're abiding by the golden rule, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's how you advance. And yeah, sometimes it's a luck of the draw, depends upon who you know or something like that, or maybe you're in the right place at the right time, and sometimes we're in the right place at the wrong time and it doesn't work out so well. But we learn from our mistakes, and we learned that we can have those mistakes and still be successful in the end. Look at Dave Ramsey. He was bankrupt 2 or 3 different times before he made it to the top. I mean, look at even Donald Trump had faced bankruptcy at some times. You know, you make some bad mistakes at some point, but you admit to them and then you go on.
So you're saying that if let's say it gets in the paper or the social media campaign flyers that you're a racist and white supremacist, you and your husband know, and your kids know, that's water off a duck's back.
Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. So, you know, hey, we just get up in the morning. We know that we're doing the right thing and we're working towards success. And we've got good ideas, you know, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is the fundamentals of America. And it's a great idea. It's great policy. We just need to allow our Constitution and the way it was written to be the law of the land, and not to be hitting us over the head with what we in power now. We don't want our government to become a monarchy the way which is what we left. In most cases, when our founders or our forefathers came over to this country, they were leaving the monarchy. There were things that were being done. And even though while they were living here, they were still under the rule of the monarchy. It wasn't long before they said, hey, taxation without representation, and you want to take my my pine trees over here and use only for your ships, but they're on my land and you don't want to pay me for them. So, you know, people started to say, this isn't right. We're going to fight for it. And we did. And we were those ruffians that weren't well trained and didn't know what we were doing with all of those rifles and so forth. But we fought them back, right?
Okay.
We won.
So now let me push the harassment agenda a little further here and see if you're still comfortable on being an elected official in this day and age, especially with the Republican Party. Although Kristen Sinema of Arizona is actually a Democrat. And I guess she wants to protect her border. Well, the Arizona people, they're taking all the illegal immigrants in.
They're not the only ones.
Texas, California, New Mexico.
No, they're shipping them everywhere in the United States. It's very, very interesting. So I went down to the border. I went down to Texas.
Oh.
And I attended a gathering of Texans against illegal immigration. And we were at the border where Biden has said, stop all construction. So part of the wall is built. And then there's this big gap, and another section's built, and another big gap. And the equipment is sitting there totally idle. The building materials are sitting there just gathering dust, literally. And the people in Texas are saying we need the border built, or the wall built, because of the way the situation is now today. Well, I lived in Del Rio, Texas for a while.
Oh.
And my husband went through a pilot training there at Laughlin Air Force Base. And we used to go across the border all the time. We eat dinner over there. We'd go down into the interior. We'd do shopping down that direction. It wouldn't be uncommon for pranksters to be doing things between the classes. For example, in the flight training classes, they would steal the emblem, and you'd be looking all over for the emblem, and it'd show up in some pawn shop down in Mexico. So we'd go down and we'd pick it up and we'd talk to the people and, you know, barter back and forth. It isn't the dangerous situation that it is today, where you have people who are just flooding into our country. And it's very interesting to me that just 2 hours south of Del Rio, in Carrizo Springs, they have this massive facility that is Homeland Security and Health and Human Services have set aside for unaccompanied teenagers, was what it says on the sign. But when you go on to the HHS website, it says it's for 2-year-olds to 18-year-olds. So it's more than just for unaccompanied teenagers. And you watch as shift changes, and there's 14 full-size luxury buses carrying the workers from one to the other. Well, you figure maybe 50 for 14. That's 700 people that are changing shifts. So this is a massive, massive structure that is there just on an everyday basis for illegals. And then we're hearing too that a third of those children, once they release them into the interior, we don't know where they are. So it raises the questions about human trafficking and all of those sorts of things.
Two questions I had for you in reference to the Biden's thing of just having an open border there. Two questions. Now, when Trump was running in originally, in 2016, he vowed to, build the wall and stuff like that. And because in New Hampshire especially, there was like an opiate. A lot of kids were overdosing on opiate drugs and fentanyl that were supposedly coming through the thing. Has there been an uptick here in 2021 of overdoses in New Hampshire?
In 2020 and 2021, yes, there have been. In fact, we don't hear about it, though, because COVID has taken over everything. You know, so we
Yeah.
don't hear about the heart attacks. We don't hear about the increase in cancer. We don't hear about the increase in drug overdoses because COVID is the only thing that we know about.
Another controversial thing in reference to Biden opening up the border, I guess there's been flights like in early morning hours to different states.
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, has there been any flights to like New Hampshire or Massachusetts?
There's been reports that there have been coming into New Hampshire. Plus, the governor opened up our borders to the Afghanis, refugees, and not that I'm against that, but I think that as long as they're well vetted, that we can certainly welcome them in because maybe they've got skills that we don't have abundance of right now. It's not to say that they're totally uneducated and just throwaways, but they could be adding to our communities. But we need to make sure that they're well vetted.
And if there were supposedly translators, quote unquote, translators for the Americans, and these Afghanis don't speak a word of English, I don't think they were properly vetted.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is, it's interesting. My children went to a camp up in Minnesota, and it was a camp that was started. It's a language camp. It was started by veterans from World War II. And what they had noticed is on the playground in Germany, the children that went out on the playground, American children, with their German counterparts, were learning language very, very quickly and were able to converse. Meanwhile, their parents who were working on the base, they lived in Germany, but they weren't on an immersion situation, right? That these children were much more fluent than their parents were. So these guys started a camp in Minnesota. And the camp in Minnesota, what you do is you pick which one you wanted to go to. My son went to the French camp. So as he arrived, all the contraband, there were no radios, there were no books, English books or anything like that, were relinquished. Your money was, any spending money you had was transferred over into francs and the French. You adopted a French name. You went into a living situation that was reminiscent of a French family and so forth. And you were totally immersed in the language. And he learned a sufficient amount of French that way to converse in it, to live in it, and so forth. When we immerse people in the English American language without making special compensations for them to help them along the line, which becomes like a crutch to them, they learn the English a lot better, and then they are able to operate in America and be able to assimilate into America, which was the original idea of immigrations into the United States in the first place. And so we need to start doing that more. And I think having multiple languages that everything's written in handicaps the American, but it also becomes a crutch to the immigrant. So we need to maybe go back to the idea that English is the language. And it's really interesting to me too, as you look at any of the videos that you see from other countries, and they eventually are speaking English to communicate. So it's not that they can't do it, it's that we make it so that they don't have to do it.
I see. Okay, so getting back to Kristen Sinema, so here we have a Democrat senator who's, she's for the liberal agenda for the most part, but she wants to protect the people of Arizona,
right,
like the illegal crossings and all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
And apparently her and Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and he has his reasons with the state of West Virginia.
Correct.
But anyway, they had a female lobbyist going into this female restroom at Arizona State University.
Right.
And there was a male lobbyist that held the door open and had his little iPhone there videotaping it. I'm just saying that I know there is a law in Arizona, very appropriately, I think, that you can't really harass people in the restroom. That's illegal, and
It's
I'm just
unethical too, don't you think?
I agree. I mean, if a pervert, for example, put things behind the women's toilets in a women's room and stuff like that, and was taping, he'd be a sicko, a pervert, the scum of
Right.
the earth, and stuff
Right.
like that. But I mean, along the same lines, that should be a sovereign area. I'm just curious, out of curiosity, would New Hampshire have the same law as Arizona does for overzealous lobbyists and journalists to leave?
The thing is that journalists have to abide by an ethical rule too, and they need to. Some of that needs to be brought back into line. I mean, I think that you can campaign, you can talk about whatever it is that a person's record is there, is a public record. But when you're starting to attack people, or you're starting to go after their family members, or make snide remarks about their family members, or even harassing them when they're trying to have a meal, I think is
Okay, yeah.
way beyond. I mean, and they did that. I mean,
Yeah, I was
down
going
in-
to ask you about that because Sarah Huckabee Sanders,
Right.
Trump's first, I think the second one, she was after Sean Spicer. But anyway, she went with her family into a Washington, D.C. restaurant and experienced that, where
Right.
people were just,
And a lot of times in DC now, anyway, having had that kind of thing happen, a lot of times the restaurant owners will make sure that they make sure that their client of notoriety is escorted into a private area so that they can eat in private, or in peace. And it to a certain large extent, part of it is our culture. Our culture has become very crass, and you can see it in our language. You can see it in our behavior. There are times when we no longer respect anybody else except me. Whatever me wants to do is okay, but if I hurt you, that's all right. It's me. It's all about me, and we need to re-educate people in the proper respect and proper etiquette. We don't
Yeah.
have etiquette anymore.
And I was going to get into one of the things that Donald Trump was impeached the second time around, insurrecting a crowd allegedly. You got this Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who went in after the Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and if you see a Trump supporter, go in and harass the heck out of them.
Yeah, shame on her.
I know,
Shame on her.
and she also went to the guy who's George Floyd in Minnesota. George Floyd in Minnesota, the court case, and she had bodyguards around her, and saying if they don't have that, Derek Chauvin, I think I agree with the verdict on that one. They did give him a long jail sentence, and deservingly so. There was no need for him to put his knee on the guy's throat and choke him to death.
Well, it depends. That's a very controversial type thing, and a part of our problem now is that we no longer are innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
We so much of what is the final verdict is today is whatever clip and whatever angle the clip is what is produced. So. Just recently, they aired a clip, and I'm trying to remember what it was about. But when the judge said they had a stop on this Rittenhouse, is it Rittenhouse?
Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse. So there was a police stop of a reporter, and they found out that the reporters were actually harassing or trying to harass or trying to entrap the jurists, and which is something they should never have done. Fortunately, the judge on the bench I have to give him a lot of credit, said this is unacceptable, and therefore he barred them from being in
Yeah,
the courtroom at all. But
MSNBC.
that the video that they were finally was released shows very clearly from the conversations with the person in New York, and the reporter was there. They found out that the police didn't say anything at all about a jury, and yet she refers to the jury in New York. So it's clear that they had been planning this, and then eventually it's not just this one reporter, but it's a multiplicity of reporters. So at what point do we have a little bit of respect for the process, respect for the other people?
I agree. And the jury duty people have to be protected by any way you can. You can't leave that pool tainted or harassed to. A journalist may say, the public has a right to know, blah, blah, blah. But no, they don't. They can't take their iPhone and take pictures of the jury like that.
Well,
and then try to identify them afterwards and run them down afterwards.
Right.
Through their relatives or something else.
Right. That's when we really overstepped the boundaries. And quite honestly, the grand jury, the original intent of the grand jury was that it was the citizens that were supposed to be in control, and that was a jury made up of 25 people. And the only person that is publicly known on the grand jury, the way it was originally intended by the Constitution, was the chairman and or the foreman. And he was the only person that was known. So if you had a complaint about something that was being done in your community, one by the officials in your community, you would take your evidence to that one person. He would then contact all of the other jurors, but it was never known who they were. And they would meet and decide whether or not there was sufficient evidence to take it further into the courts. So, the jury's always been protected from harassment and knowing who they are, basically, except for, well, when you're standing there and you see who it is and the names come out and so forth. Eventually, it does come out who it is that are sitting in your jury of peers. But we don't even allow jury of peers anymore. It's whoever we want to pick and or the attorneys want to pick and choose.
Exactly. And one thing, even straight out lying that you see in the media, and I brought up too, like Kyle Rittenhouse is known, he's all the pundits, even on CNN, MSNBC, call him like a white supremacist and a racist. All the guys, the three guys he shot were white as snow. So how, does he become a racist if you keep saying the word enough times and people start believing it?
That's when, that's the story, is a lie told often enough becomes reality, right? And perception is reality. So it does have its impact, and shame on the media for doing that. We watch the media do that even today in the oh my gosh virus that's now been released, right?
Yeah.
Even the best of the news medias are somewhat complicit in trying to make that into something bigger than it really is.
Exactly. One of the other things was at the border, I don't know if it was Del Rio or someplace else like that, where the border security on horseback was supposedly whipping the illegal aliens. And yet they had the strap from the, what do they call that on the saddle? The strap on that, it wasn't a whip, and they just needed to control them, and they had the right to vet their kids for like diseases and criminal checks and stuff like that.
Yeah, we should be, actually, when it comes to immigration, we should be doing just like they did at Ellis Island. You needed to have a job. You needed to have somebody that you were going to specifically. You needed to be free of diseases. You needed to be free of a criminal record. You needed to be healthy when you were coming in, and we wanted you to be able to provide for yourself because that's what America's about. Personal responsibility, right?
Yes. So one thing, I think we talked about this last year when you were on a year ago, August, in reference to the peaceful protest in all the major cities in 2020. Where, like, a couple dozen people, maybe a couple hundred people were killed. And not to mention, probably like millions, if not billions of dollars worth of property was either looted, burnt, destroyed, or something like that. I'm just curious if Black Lives Matter or Antifa will ever make their way to like Nashua or Manchester.
Well, they actually did make it to Manchester, and they did make it into Concord to a certain extent. So, but it was interesting because when they were coming across the border into Manchester, they were met on Elm Street with a lot of patriots. And in New Hampshire, we have open carry and the right to conceal carry. And so, when you've got all of those guys sitting up there on the roof of Murphy's and on the street and so forth, you're going to behave yourself, right? Unless you're ready to encounter all of that. But yeah, there have been, and Black Lives Matter representatives have made it into a commission that Sununu set up to review our police. Our police are some of the best trained in the United States. They're some of the elite of elite, and yet we're going to turn around and say we still have to improve because a member of Black Lives Matter wants something different. I think that we really need to step back and say, hey, wait a minute, who is this person? What's their background? What's their motivation? And weigh that a little bit more before we just jump into the fray.
So in these major cities, so to speak, in 2020, was it the mayors or the governors that called in the National Guard to these places?
So the National Guard is under the purview of the governor.
Oh.
So the governor is the one that calls in the National Guard, is in charge of the militia in the National Guard. For the state, it's not.
Oh, okay. So somebody like Sununu probably would have waited saying, well, if Manchester police can't keep these guys under this protest under control, we got to get the New Hampshire National Guard in there.
Right. Well, and that's what they did down in Texas just recently. Right? They called in the National Guard to help police the border.
Okay. So you have no qualms about that if the need arises.
Right. I mean, my responsibility as governor of the state of New Hampshire is to the people, to protect them, to make sure that they're safe and that they're able to conduct their businesses across state lines, within the state as well as across state lines. That is one of the, and then law enforcement. We're enforcing the laws of the state.
Okay. Well, this question, I know I asked you last time, but I'll ask it again to see if there's been any more developments. Has there been any talks in New Hampshire legislation to institute a sales tax or a state tax for New Hampshire residents?
Well, the Democrats are always wanting to, to institute a state tax or a sales tax and so forth. But no, that is one of the stalwarts of the Republican Party, and I would say even of the Libertarians, that they don't want government to take more than they should.
Okay. And we definitely talked about this last time too. COVID. Are you happy the way that Chris Sununu has handled the COVID situation in New Hampshire?
Well, I believe in a person's ability to make their own decisions, and each individual in the state of New Hampshire has individual conditions that they need to address. And so what I think maybe the first 2 weeks. I'm not even sure that the first 2 weeks, because I have a biology degree. Um, I looked at this and said, we live in a sea of microbes. There's bacteria, there's viruses, there's funguses, there's parasites that are floating in the air that we can't see except under an electron microscope, right? So to turn around and find that there's one virus that's going to attack everybody did not make any sense to me at the very, very beginning. So I suspected that there was something underlying. And now there are many, many theories, and a lot of it is supported by other evidence that it's not a conspiracy theory, that there really is a conspiracy going on. And so I really do believe that the individual could be given the information that we had and said to them, look, we think there's a virus out there that could cause you some major discomfort, and that you need, if you've got comorbidities, that you need to be able to address those. Here's what it is. Here's what we're suspecting. Here's how you can take care of yourself. Make sure you're getting plenty of rest. Make sure you're getting plenty of liquids, that you're eating right, that you've got your these vitamins. Vitamin D3 is very important. We know now that that's something. Zinc is another thing that's important. That you're getting your vitamin C, and just make sure that you're taking care of yourself. If you're feeling a little under the weather, or somebody's feeling under the weather next to you, make sure that you're social distancing and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and not infecting other people. Respect the standards of good practices for good health. Washing your hands has been something that we've known for years. In fact, it's fascinating that that was a requirement in many cases before you entered a house. In biblical times, you were supposed to wash your hands and sometimes your feet before you came in. So,
Wow. To the best of your knowledge, does any other country, like I heard stuff about Sweden and Norway and Finland and stuff like that, supposedly healthier countries than Americans. Is there any country that you're aware of that has like no restrictions on COVID mask, or having like a mandate on shots?
it's interesting. I think, isn't it in Africa where they've been being treated with ivermectin for years because of their parasites, because of their viruses and so forth like that, that they haven't had the influx of the symptoms and so forth that we have.
Wow.
So there are areas where common sense is really, and even South Dakota, Governor Kristi Noem said to the people, we're not closing your businesses. We're not we're not determining who's vital and who's not vital. Everybody's vital. Here's the information. You make your own decisions. You do what you think is the best thing for all of you. And let's carry on our business as normal. And you're not devastating the economy. You're allowing people to still provide for their families and so forth. And they've had a large influx of people who are coming into the country, into the state, because they want to escape all of this other stuff.
So are New Hampshire public schools open, or do they have to like wear masks all day to classes?
It depends. It
Oh.
depends upon the school. And unfortunately, there is a law in the state of New Hampshire. It's 126 U4 and RSA. And it specifically says that schools and treatment facilities cannot inhibit the breathing of a child. And a child is anybody under the age of 18. And in some cases, because of the extent that a child can stay until they're 22, it would cover up until that age group. But you're not supposed to restrict the breathing of a child.
Wow.
And yet our schools are violating it. Some of our parents are violating it. but there is that law.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Well, so time flies when you're having fun, Karen, eh?
Yeah.
My my producer just told me we have all less than 3 minutes to this in this episode. Is there anything we talked about which you'd like to elaborate, or something we have not brought up which you'd like to bring up at this time?
Well, the primary thing that I'm running on, and the reason that I'm even in this position, is because I do think that our government has far exceeded the original intent. The original intent was that our Constitution was supposed to limit what the government officials did, and the rest of the activity and so forth was left for the individual to be able to live freely and with responsibilities. It doesn't mean that you have this liberty and that you can just go do whatever you want to do. You still have to do it with responsibility. And so that's the primary reason that I'm running, is because I think that our government has far outreached its purview, and that we need to start turning this ship of state back into the original intent of our founding fathers. And so if you wanted to join me on my plight, please go to KarenTesterman.com. And if you want to introduce me to your friends, if you want me to come speak to your group, if you're a business out there and you'd like to show me what it is that you're doing, and talk to me about what the government should be doing and getting out of your way. And the other thing is that our general court, our legislature, is their primary purpose for meeting is to address the remonstrances and the grievances of the people. And that's their first order of business. But our current construct doesn't do that. And we need to start getting back into those sorts of things. That's basically why I'm running.
I see. So that's been a great power-packed show, I think, Karen. Thank you very much for being my guest.
Well, thank you.
And like she said, KarenTesterman.com has a lot of interesting stuff on it, a lot of the issues, maybe some we haven't covered in this program, you can look up and stuff like that. Get in touch with her. You can contact her through that thing. And until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Frank Sabrick for Frankly Speaking. Join us next time. Thank you very much.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.